At 7:42 p.m. on a Friday night, I was sitting at the head table of my own rehearsal dinner with 38 people watching me pretend not to cry. The private dining room at Briar House smelled like roasted garlic, white roses, and rain. A storm had started outside 20 minutes earlier, tapping against the tall windows like fingernails. The string lights above us made everyone's champagne glasses glow gold. It should have been beautiful. It should have been the night before the happiest day of my life. Instead, my mother stood in the middle of the room, one hand wrapped around a glass of wine, and said loudly enough for my fiancé's grandparents to hear, "We just hope Nathan understands what kind of woman he's marrying." The room went quiet in that strange way rooms do when people know something cruel is coming but are too polite to stop it. My fiancé Nathan reached for my hand under the table. I was 29 years old, wearing a cream satin dress I had saved for 3 months to buy, and suddenly I felt like I was 12 again, standing in our kitchen while my parents explained why my sister deserved the bigger bedroom, the better birthday party, the first chance, the last apology. My father stood beside my mother with his hands folded in front of him, silent as always. My younger sister Chloe sat 2 tables away, smiling into her wine glass. Then my mother turned toward Nathan's parents and said, "Ava has always been good at pretending to be helpless around people with money." The sentence landed like a slap. I heard someone gasp. I heard a fork hit a plate. I heard Nathan's mother whisper, "Linda, stop." But my mother didn't stop. She looked right at me and said, "You can dress it up as love, Ava, but everyone here knows what this is. You found a wealthy man, and now you're clinging to him before he sees the truth." My throat closed. 38 faces turned toward me. My parents had ignored me before. They had betrayed me before. They had chosen Chloe before. But they had never done it like this, in front of Nathan's family, in front of our wedding party, in front of the people who were supposed to watch me walk down the aisle the next morning. My father finally spoke. Not to defend me. Not to tell my mother she had gone too far. He lifted his chin and said, "We warned you, Nathan. Our daughter has expensive tastes and no shame." Nathan pushed his chair back. But before he could stand, the door to the private dining room opened. A man in a dark gray suit stepped inside carrying a leather folder under one arm. His shoes were wet from the rain. His expression was calm, almost tired, like he had already seen every ugly version of a family pretending to be decent. Nathan looked at him and nodded once. My mother frowned. "Who is that?" The man walked to the front of the room and placed the folder on the table between the candles. Nathan's voice was low. "That's my attorney." My mother laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Your attorney? At a rehearsal dinner?" The man opened the folder just enough for me to see the first page. Across the top, in black letters, were the words, "Eleanor Whitcomb Family Trust." My grandmother's name. My mother's face changed. For the first time that night she stopped smiling. And that was when I realized Nathan had not been silent because he was embarrassed. He had been silent because he was waiting for the truth to arrive. 2. Before everything broke. My name is Ava Bennett, and for most of my life, I thought love was something you earned by being useful. I learned that in small ways first. When I was 8, I learned that being quiet made my mother less angry. When I was 11, I learned that giving Chloe the last slice of cake made my father call me mature. When I was 14, I learned that getting straight A's mattered less than Chloe getting a callback for the school musical. By the time I was grown, I had become the kind of daughter who apologized before anyone accused her of anything. I worked as a grant coordinator for a children's literacy nonprofit in Portland. It was not glamorous work, but I loved it. I loved the smell of old library rooms, the chaos of school supply drives, the way a child's face changed when they realized a book belonged to them and did not have to be returned. I met Nathan Ward at a fundraiser where I was trying to fix a projector with a paperclip in panic. He was not what people assumed when they heard his last name. Yes, his family had money. His grandfather had started a construction company that grew into something larger than anyone expected. His parents lived in a house with a long driveway and a kitchen island bigger than my first apartment. But Nathan was not flashy. He wore the same watch every day because his father gave it to him when he graduated college. He volunteered at the same community center where my nonprofit ran weekend reading sessions. He remembered small details. He noticed when my voice changed. He asked questions and waited for real answers. The first time he met my parents, my mother looked him up and down like she was pricing furniture. "Well," she said, smiling too brightly, "Ava didn't tell us you came from the Ward family." Nathan smiled politely. "I usually just say I'm from Portland." My father laughed. People with money always say things like that. I wanted the floor to open. Nathan only squeezed my knee under the dinner table. After he proposed, I did something foolish. I hoped my family would be happy for me. Not perform happy. Not socially acceptable happy. Truly happy. I imagined my mother helping me choose flowers. I imagined my father walking me down the aisle and maybe, just maybe, looking proud. I imagined Chloe teasing me about place cards and sending me pictures of bridesmaid hairstyles. For a few weeks, I let myself believe it could happen. My mother asked about the venue. My father asked what Nathan's parents were contributing. Chloe asked whether the photographer was actually good or non-profit good. There were signs. There were always signs. But I was so tired of being guarded. I wanted a family. I wanted one season of my life where I did not have to brace for impact every time my phone lit up with my mother's name. Our wedding was supposed to be small, elegant, and warm. A garden ceremony behind Briar House, followed by dinner under white lights. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that screamed money. Nathan and I paid for most of it ourselves. His parents offered to help with the venue because they knew the owner, but Nathan and I insisted on keeping things reasonable. I bought my dress off the rack. I made the welcome signs myself. My friend Tessa handled the flowers at cost. But my mother did not see simple. She saw opportunity. She saw Nathan's last name, his parents' house, his family business, and she built a story in her head where I was not a daughter getting married. I was a climber. A threat. A girl from her own home who had somehow reached a table she was never supposed to sit at. And behind all of that was one name no one said out loud anymore. My grandmother, Eleanor. 3. The family favorite. My grandmother Eleanor Whitcomb was my mother's mother, and she was the only person in my childhood who ever made me feel chosen without asking me to perform for it. She smelled like lavender soap and black coffee. She wore old cardigans with pearl buttons. She kept hard candy in her purse and cash in strange places, like folded inside recipe books or tucked under lampshades. When I was little, she called me steady girl. Not pretty girl. Not smart girl. Not good girl. Steady. You watch everything, Ava, she told me once while we shelled peas on her back porch. That will save you one day. I didn't know what she meant then. My mother hated how close I was to her. Chloe was the family favorite and everyone knew it, even if no one said it directly. Chloe's finger paintings were framed. Mine were stored in a plastic bin in the garage. Chloe's dance recitals were family events. My debate tournaments were too early on Saturdays. Chloe's mistakes were stress. My mistakes were character flaws. When Chloe crashed my father's car at 17, my parents said she was overwhelmed. When I got a B+ in chemistry, my mother said, "You know, Ava, some people peak early." The unfair rule in our house was simple. Chloe could need. I had to provide. If Chloe cried, the room rearranged itself around her. If I cried, my mother looked annoyed like I had spilled something. My father was not loud like my mother. He was worse in some ways because he made silence feel like agreement. When my mother was cruel, he looked down at his plate. When Chloe lied, he changed the subject. When I asked for fairness, he sighed like fairness was an expensive hobby I needed to outgrow. My family valued reputation above truth. They were not rich, but they wanted to look adjacent to rich. My mother volunteered at charity luncheons where she donated time she did not have and money she borrowed. My father wore suits to restaurants where everyone else wore sweaters. Chloe learned early that image was currency. I learned that image could become a weapon. When I got a partial scholarship to college, my mother told people I was lucky the school needed diversity of income. When I got my first nonprofit job, she said it was sweet that I wasn't chasing money. When I moved into a studio apartment with a leaking bathroom ceiling, she told relatives I liked humble living. But when Chloe dropped out of her marketing program after one semester, my parents called it a mental health reset and paid for her apartment for a year. I did not resent Chloe at first. That took time. It is hard to resent someone you have been trained to protect. When we were kids, Chloe used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I would hold her and tell her stories until she fell asleep. I packed her lunches when my mother forgot. I lied to teachers when Chloe skipped class. I covered for her so often that by adulthood, lying for Chloe felt like a family tradition. Then she opened a bridal styling business with money no one could explain. That was the first crack. She called it Chloe Bennett Events, even though she had no license, no training, and no patience for brides who did not praise her within the first 5 minutes. My parents threw a launch party with champagne they could not afford. At the party, my mother stood beside Chloe and said, "Some daughters know how to dream bigger." I was standing close enough to hear. My grandmother had been dead for 3 years by then, and I remember thinking how different the room would have felt if she were alive. She would have caught my eye. She would have patted the chair next to her. She would have said something soft enough to sound polite and sharp enough to leave a mark. But Grandma Eleanor was gone. And with her gone, my mother seemed to believe there was no one left to contradict her. There was one thing, though, that never made sense. A few months after my grandmother's funeral, my mother told me Grandma had left small sentimental items, and that the rest had been tied up in debts, medical expenses, and taxes. I was grieving. I was exhausted. I believed her. When I asked about the little pearl ring Grandma used to let me wear, my mother said it had gone missing. When I asked about the recipe box Grandma promised me, she said Chloe wanted it for her brand. When I asked if there was a will, my father said, "Don't make death about money, Ava." The shame worked. I stopped asking. That was exactly what they needed me to do. 4. The betrayal. The first open betrayal happened 3 weeks before the wedding. My mother invited me to lunch at a restaurant I could not afford and acted offended when I ordered soup. "You're marrying Nathan Ward," she said, unfolding her napkin. "You can stop performing poverty now." I set my spoon down. "I'm not performing anything." Chloe sat beside her, scrolling on her phone. She was supposed to be one of my bridesmaids, though she had not answered a single message about dress fittings. My father arrived late, kissed my mother's cheek, and sat down without apologizing. For 15 minutes they talked around me. Chloe's business was struggling. A vendor had backed out. She had cash flow issues, which was my mother's elegant way of saying Chloe had spent deposits before completing jobs. Then my mother reached into her purse and placed a folded paper on the table. "What is that?" I asked. "A family understanding," she said. I opened it. It was not legal in any meaningful way, but it was written to look legal. It said I acknowledged that my parents had supported me financially through adulthood, that I had no claim to any Bennett or Whitcomb family assets, and that I would not allow Nathan or his family to interfere in private family matters. At the bottom was a blank line for my signature. I stared at it. Why would I sign this? My father leaned back. "Because marriage changes things. Nathan's family has lawyers. We don't want confusion later." "There's nothing to be confused about," I said. "You haven't supported me financially since I was 18. My mother smiled like I had embarrassed myself. "We gave you life, Ava." Chloe finally looked up from her phone. "Just sign it. It's not a big deal unless you're planning something." I felt heat rise in my face. "Planning what?" My mother's voice dropped. "Don't play innocent. You have always been hungry around people with full plates." That was the sentence. The one that lodged under my ribs. Not because it was the worst thing she had ever said, but because she said it with such calm confidence, like she had been waiting years to name me something ugly. I pushed the paper back. "I'm not signing this." My father's jaw tightened. "Then maybe we need to reconsider attending the wedding." I looked at him, waiting for the softening that never came. "You would skip my wedding because I won't sign a fake document?" My mother's eyes hardened. "We would skip your wedding because we refused to watch you use a good family." I laughed once. Came out broken. "I love Nathan." Chloe rolled her eyes. "Conveniently." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. People at nearby tables glanced over. My mother reached for my wrist, not gently. "You walk out now," she said. "And don't expect us to clean up the mess when his family figures you out." I pulled my hand free. For once I did not apologize. I walked out into the parking lot, sat in my car, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Chloe in the family group chat. "Ava made lunch dramatic because mom asked her to be honest before marrying into money. Typical." My mother replied with a sad face. My father wrote, "Enough. She made her choice." By the time I got home, 3 relatives had already texted me asking what I had done. That was how my family worked. They hurt you privately, then they made you defend yourself publicly. 5. The moment I stopped begging, the next week felt like being slowly erased from my own wedding. My mother called my florist and said the rehearsal dinner arrangements needed to be toned down because the bride was worried they looked cheap. Tessa called me immediately, furious. My father called Nathan's father and asked if the wards had properly protected themselves before letting me into the family. Chloe told my bridesmaids I was having second thoughts and that the wedding might be postponed. Then the family group chat turned into a courtroom where I had no lawyer. Aunt Melissa wrote, "Ava, your mother is heartbroken." Cousin Reed wrote, "No offense, but marrying rich changes people." My mother sent a long message about how painful it was to watch a daughter become entitled. I typed replies and deleted them. I typed, "You're lying." I typed, "Why do you hate me so much?" I typed, "Please just stop." I sent nothing. Nathan found me sitting on our bathroom floor 2 nights later with my phone in my lap and my wedding binder open beside me. The binder had little tabs I had made months earlier. Vows, seating, flowers, music. I had been so excited when I made those tabs. Now they looked childish. Nathan sat on the floor across from me. "They're not going to stop," I whispered. He did not rush to comfort me with easy lies. "No," he said. "I don't think they are." I wiped my face with the heel of my hand. "Maybe we should elope. If that's what you want, we will." I looked at him. "But I don't want to run. I just don't want to be humiliated." His eyes changed then. Not angry at me. Angry for me. "There are things about your grandmother's estate that don't add up," he said. I went still. "What?" He hesitated. "My attorney looked at that paper your parents wanted you to sign. He said the wording was strange. Especially the part about Whitcomb family assets." My stomach tightened. "I don't have any Whitcomb family assets." "That's what your parents told you." I stared at him. A memory came back so sharply I could smell lavender soap. Grandma Eleanor's kitchen. Rain against the window. Her hands folding an envelope. Her voice saying, "Steady, girl. If they ever make you feel like you have nothing, remember that people lie loudest when paper tells the truth." I had forgotten that sentence. Or maybe I had buried it because believing it would have required me to admit my parents might steal from me. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cream envelope. "I found this in the box from your old apartment. The one marked college papers." My name was written on the front in my grandmother's handwriting. "Ava, when you are ready." My hand shook so badly Nathan had to open it for me. Inside was a short letter and a business card. The card belonged to a law firm. Hale, Mercer and Vale. The letter was only 6 lines. "My steady girl. If your mother tells you there was nothing, ask for the trust file. If your father tells you not to make death about money, ask who made life about control. Do not fight them alone. Do not warn them first. Love, Grandma E." I read it 3 times. Then I folded forward and cried so hard I could not breathe. Not because of money. That is what people like my mother never understood. It was never about money. It was about the fact that my grandmother had known. She had seen the shape of my family clearly enough to leave me instructions from the grave. The next morning, I called the number on the card. The receptionist transferred me to a man named Julian Vale. When I said my name, he went quiet. Then he said, "Ms. Bennett, I've been waiting a long time for your call." That was the moment I stopped begging my family to believe me. I started collecting proof. 6. What they didn't know. Julian Vale's office was on the 6th floor of a brick building downtown, the kind with old brass elevator buttons and heavy doors that made every hallway sound serious. He was in his early 40s, with silver at his temples and the calm voice of someone who had learned not to react too quickly. He did not begin with accusations. He began with documents. He placed a folder in front of me and said, "Your grandmother established the Eleanor Whitcomb Family Trust when you were 16. You were named the primary beneficiary of a protected education and housing fund. At 25, you became entitled to request full accounting and partial distribution." I stared at him. "I'm 29. Yes. My parents told me there was nothing." Julian's expression did not change, but his eyes softened. "That appears to have been false." The room tilted slightly. Nathan sat beside me, silent, his hand resting near mine but not touching it until I reached for him. Julian turned a page. Your mother was never trustee. Your father was temporary co-trustee for administrative purposes until your 25th birthday. He was removed automatically under the terms of the trust after failing to provide proper accounting. My father was removed? Yes. Does he know that? He was notified by certified mail 4 years ago. I remembered my father telling me not to make death about money. I remembered my mother saying the pearl ring had gone missing. I remembered Chloe's business appearing out of nowhere. Julian continued. After your father's authority ended, several attempts were made to access funds using outdated documents. Those requests were denied. However, there are also transfers from accounts associated with your parents that raise questions. We are still tracing them. I looked at the file. How much? Julian paused. The original trust was valued at approximately $840,000. It has grown since then. Your grandmother also placed a small commercial property deed inside the trust structure. That property currently generates rental income. I covered my mouth. Nathan whispered. Ava. I could not speak. For years I had worked 2 jobs in college. I had eaten rice and canned soup during weeks when my paycheck disappeared into rent. I had skipped dental appointments. I had cried in grocery store aisles because I could not afford both laundry detergent and gas. And somewhere, locked behind lies and shame, there had been a file with my name on it. Julian slid another page forward. This is important. Your grandmother included a protection clause. If any immediate family member attempted to coerce you into disclaiming your interest, misrepresent the trust, or interfere with your marriage or housing for financial gain, they could be formally excluded from any future discretionary family distributions. I blinked. She wrote that. She was very specific. Of course she was. Steady girl. Julian looked at Nathan. Your fiancé contacted me only after you received the paper your parents tried to make you sign. He did not ask about your assets. He asked whether someone was trying to pressure you into giving up rights you didn't know you had. I turned to Nathan. He looked almost embarrassed. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. I thought of my mother calling me a gold digger. I thought of my father warning Nathan's family. I thought of Chloe smirking at lunch. What happens now? I asked. Julian closed the folder. That depends on what you want. Quiet legal action is one option. A formal notice is another. But your parents have already made defamatory statements to Nathan's family, your relatives, and several vendors. If they repeat those statements at the rehearsal dinner, we will be ready. I looked down at my hands. For most of my life I had defended myself with emotion, which my family used as proof that I was unstable. This time I had paper. Trust documents. Bank letters. Certified notices. Screenshots. Vendor call logs. A copy of the fake family understanding. And one audio recording from a voicemail my mother did not realize she had left where she said, "If Ava signs before the wedding, we can keep Nathan's people out of the Whitcomb mess." Nathan asked me that night if I wanted to cancel the rehearsal dinner. I looked at the invitation list. My parents had confirmed. Chloe had confirmed. So had the aunts and cousins who had judged me in the group chat. I thought about Grandma Eleanor. Do not warn them first. No, I said. My voice did not shake. Let them come. 7. The reveal. The rehearsal dinner began beautifully. That was the strange part. The storm had not started yet when guests arrived. The sky was soft and gray. The dining room at Briar House glowed with candles and warm wood. Nathan's mother hugged me and whispered, "You look lovely, sweetheart." Sweetheart. One word almost undid me. I had spent years starving for a mother to say something gentle without attaching a hook to it. My parents arrived 11 minutes late. My mother wore a navy dress and pearls I recognized immediately. Grandma Eleanor's pearls. The ones my mother claimed had been lost. For a second I could not move. Nathan followed my gaze and saw them. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Chloe arrived behind them in a silver dress that looked more bridal than bridesmaid. She kissed the air beside my cheek and whispered, "Big night. Try not to embarrass yourself." I smiled. Surprised both of us. "I'll do my best." Dinner started. People talked. Glasses clinked. Nathan's best man told a story about Nathan getting lost on a hiking trail because he insisted the map was emotionally inaccurate. People laughed. For almost an hour I let myself feel the life I wanted. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her glass with a knife. The sound cut through the room. Nathan's father frowned slightly. Is she giving a toast? I had not asked her to. My mother smiled at the room with wet eyes she could summon whenever attention required softness. I know this is usually the time for sweet words, she began. And of course we wish Nathan and Ava well. Nathan's hand found mine under the table. But marriage is serious, she continued. It is not just flowers and dresses. It is family. It is honesty. It is knowing who someone really is before vows are spoken. My heartbeat slowed. Not sped up. Slowed. Like my body had finally understood we were not escaping this. We have struggled, my mother said, pressing a hand to her chest, with whether to speak tonight, but as Ava's parents we feel responsible. My father stood beside her. Chloe lifted her phone. Of course she did. My mother looked at Nathan. Nathan, you come from a generous family. A respected family. And Ava has always been drawn to what other people can give her. A murmur moved through the room. Nathan's grandmother whispered. What on earth? My mother pushed forward. She has told stories about us. Made us look cruel. But the truth is, Ava has always wanted more than she earned. More attention, more sympathy, more money. I felt Nathan's hand tighten. My father added, we warned your family privately. We were ignored. Nathan's mother stood. Robert, this is inappropriate. My mother's face sharpened. What's inappropriate is letting your son be used. Then she looked at me. You can dress it up as love, Ava, but everyone here knows what this is. Silence. She said the word slowly. Gold digger. The room froze. A server stopped near the doorway holding a tray of coffee cups. My chest hurt, but I did not cry. That seemed to anger my mother more than tears would have. She wanted collapse. She wanted proof that I was dramatic, unstable, greedy, ungrateful. Instead I sat still. Nathan rose from his chair. Enough. My father pointed at him. You should be thanking us. Nathan looked toward the door. That was when Julian Vale entered. The storm had started by then, rain streaking the windows behind him. He walked in calmly, carrying the leather trust file. My mother's expression flickered. Not fear yet. Recognition. Julian placed the folder on the table. Good evening, he said. My name is Julian Vale. I represent Ava Bennett in matters related to the Eleanor Whitcomb Family Trust. My mother laughed too quickly. This is absurd. Ava hired a lawyer for a family dinner. Julian looked at her. No, Mrs. Bennett. Your daughter hired a lawyer after you attempted to pressure her into signing away rights connected to a trust you claimed did not exist. The silence that followed was different. The first silence had been shock. This one had weight. My father's face darkened. You have no right to discuss private family business here. Julian opened the folder. Your wife made private business public when she accused my client of financial exploitation in front of 38 witnesses. Chloe lowered her phone. Nathan's mother sat down slowly. Julian removed the first document. This is a certified copy of the Eleanor Whitcomb Family Trust, established for Ava Bennett's education, housing, and long-term security. My mother whispered, Stop, but no one looked at her. They were looking at the file. Julian continued. Contrary to statements made by Robert and Linda Bennett, the trust was not exhausted by debts, medical bills, or taxes. Ava Bennett was and remains the primary beneficiary. Aunt Melissa turned toward my mother. Linda. My mother's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Julian placed another page on the table. This is the trustee removal notice sent to Robert Bennett 4 years ago after failure to provide accounting. My father took one step forward. That was a misunderstanding. Julian did not raise his voice. This is the certified mail receipt bearing your signature. My father stopped. A sound moved through the room. Not a gasp exactly. More like 38 people understanding the same thing at once. My mother tried again. This has nothing to do with tonight. Ava is manipulating you. She has always manipulated people with tears. I looked at her then. I'm not crying. Her face flushed. Julian removed another document. This is a copy of the paper Mrs. Bennett presented to Ava 3 weeks ago, asking her to state she had no claim to Whitcomb family assets. Nathan's father leaned forward. You tried to make her sign that? My mother snapped. We were protecting our family. I stood up. My legs trembled but my voice held. No. You were protecting your lie. Chloe stood suddenly. This is so dramatic. It's a trust. Rich people have trusts. Who cares? Julian turned one page. Ms. Chloe Bennett, since you raised the issue, this file also includes transfers connected to your business, Chloe Bennett Events. Chloe's face went white. My mother said, don't answer that. Julian looked at her. She does not need to. The bank records answer it. He placed copies on the table. Over a 2-year period, approximately $118,000 passed through accounts controlled by Robert and Linda Bennett and into business expenses for Chloe Bennett Events. Some of those transfers are currently under review because they appear to have been justified using outdated trust references. Chloe whispered, Mom. That one word told the room everything. My father reached for the documents, but Nathan stepped in front of the table. Don't. My father looked at him with pure hatred. This is our family. Nathan's voice was calm. No. This is Ava's life. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, maybe. Or maybe just panic wearing a softer dress. Ava, she said, turning to me. You're going to destroy your family over money? There it was. The final trap. If I defended myself, I was greedy. If I stayed silent, they won. If I exposed them, I was destroying the family. I looked at my mother wearing my grandmother's pearls. Then I looked at my father, who had signed away truth and called it protection. Then I looked at Chloe, my little sister, who once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms and now stared at me like I was the storm. I said, You called me a gold digger because you thought Nathan's family had money. My voice shook once, then steadied. But the truth is, you were the only people at this table trying to get paid. No one moved. Even the rain seemed quieter. Julian closed the folder halfway. One more matter, he said. My mother's eyes widened. No. He looked at me for permission. I nodded. He removed a small velvet pouch from the folder and placed it in my hand. Inside was Grandma Eleanor's pearl ring, the one my mother said was missing. A note came with it, written in my grandmother's handwriting. For Ava, when she finally stops asking people to love her honestly and starts requiring it. I broke then. Not loudly. Just one hand over my mouth, one tear falling onto the paper. Nathan put his arm around me. Across the room, Nathan's grandmother was crying too. My mother whispered, That ring was supposed to stay with the family. I looked at her. It did. That was the line that ended the dinner. Ate the fallout. No one ate dessert. The chocolate cake sat untouched on the sideboard while people stood in small clusters, whispering like they were afraid loud voices might break something else. My mother tried to leave first. Julian stopped her near the door and handed her an envelope. Formal notice, he said. You are to preserve all documents, messages, bank records, and communications related to the trust, Chloe Bennett Events, and any statements made about Ava Bennett's finances or character. My father snatched the envelope. You'll regret humiliating us. I almost laughed. Even then, humiliation was something happening to them, not something they had done. Chloe walked past me without looking at me. Halfway to the door, she turned and said, I hope you're happy. I thought about answering. I thought about saying, I hope one day you understand. I thought about saying, I protected you for years and you still chose them. Instead, I said nothing. That silence hurt her more than anything else would have. By morning, the family group chat had changed tone. Aunt Melissa wrote, Ava, I am so sorry. I did not know. Cousin Reed wrote, Your mom told us a very different story. My mother left the chat. Then Chloe did. My father stayed for 6 more minutes, probably trying to think of something authoritative to say. Then he left too. The wedding video did not go viral publicly, not at first. Nathan and I did not post it. We were not trying to become internet people. But one of Chloe's friends had recorded part of the confrontation and sent it to someone, who sent it to someone else. By Sunday night, half the local wedding vendor community knew that Chloe Bennett Events was involved in a legal dispute connected to trust money. Two brides canceled their contracts. A venue owner asked Chloe for proof of insurance and accounting. The family reputation my mother had spent years polishing cracked in less than 48 hours. Julian filed a formal demand for accounting. The trust protector began reviewing every attempted access request my father had made after his authority ended. The bank opened an internal investigation. No one was dragged away in handcuffs. Real consequences are usually quieter than that. But quiet does not mean weak. My parents received notice that they were excluded from any future discretionary Whitcomb family distributions under the coercion clause. Chloe's business accounts were frozen temporarily, while transfers were reviewed. My mother called me 17 times in one day. I did not answer. Then she texted, "Ava, this has gone too far. We are still your parents." I stared at that sentence for a long time. We are still your parents. As if biology was a receipt they could keep presenting after every cruelty. Nathan found me on the porch with my phone in my hand. "You don't have to answer," he said. I know. That was new. Knowing. Not hoping. Not asking. Not bargaining. Knowing. We got married the next afternoon under a sky that cleared 10 minutes before the ceremony. My parents were not there. Chloe was not there. 3 seats in the second row stayed empty until Nathan's mother quietly asked the coordinator to remove them. I thought the empty spaces would break me. They didn't. When I walked down the aisle, Nathan cried. Not politely. Not one shining movie tear. He cried like a man who understood exactly what it had cost me to keep walking toward love, after being trained to expect punishment. At the altar he whispered, "Steady girl." I almost laughed and cried at the same time. We said our vows with damp grass under our feet and white roses moving in the wind. After the ceremony, Nathan's grandmother pressed my hands between hers. "Your grandmother would be proud," she said. For the first time all weekend I believed it. 9. What I learned. People think betrayal is loud. Sometimes it is. Sometimes betrayal stands up at your rehearsal dinner with a glass of wine and calls you a gold digger in front of everyone you love. But sometimes betrayal is quiet. It is a missing ring, a folded document, a father changing the subject, a mother using shame so you never ask the right question, a sister letting you be the villain because the lie pays her bills. For years, I thought healing meant getting my family to finally understand me. I thought if I found the perfect words, they would soften. If I stayed calm enough, they would listen. If I became successful enough, generous enough, thin enough, quiet enough, useful enough, they would look at me and say, "We see you now." But some families do not misunderstand you. They understand exactly how much they can take from you before you leave. That was the hardest truth. Not that my parents lied. Not that Chloe benefited. Not even that my grandmother had protected me in ways I never knew. The hardest truth was realizing my family had always known I was hurting. They just preferred me hurt and obedient. After the wedding I started therapy. I know that sounds simple, but for me it felt like learning a new language. The first time my therapist asked, "What do you want?" I gave her 3 answers about what would make other people comfortable. She waited. Then I cried because I did not know. Nathan and I did not move into a mansion. We did not suddenly become flashy people. The trust did not turn my life into a fairy tale. And honestly, I am grateful for that. What it gave me was breathing room. I paid off my student loans. I fixed my car. I went to the dentist without calculating groceries in my head. I used part of the trust income to create a small scholarship fund through the nonprofit where I worked, named after Grandma Eleanor. The first recipient was a 17-year-old girl who wrote in her application, "I want to become the first person in my family who does not have to ask permission to dream." I kept that sentence taped inside my desk drawer. My mother still sends emails sometimes. The subject lines change. Family emergency. Please call. Your father is not well. This is cruel. I do not respond directly. Everything goes through Julian. My father sent one letter, handwritten. It did not apologize. It said he hoped I would someday understand the pressure he was under. I folded it once and put it in a box. Not because it mattered. Because it didn't. Chloe tried to message me through a cousin 6 months later. She said she had been caught in the middle. That used to be enough to pull me back in. Not anymore. Being caught in the middle is not the same as choosing the truth. I do not hate them. That surprises people. Hate would require me to keep feeding a fire they started. I am tired of tending things that only burn me. What I have now is distance. Clean, quiet distance. The kind where my phone can buzz without my stomach dropping. The kind where holidays do not feel like court dates. The kind where love is not measured by how much disrespect I can survive. Sometimes I wear Grandma Eleanor's pearl ring on a chain under my shirt. Not because it is expensive. It isn't compared to everything else. I wear it because it reminds me of the night my mother said the ring was supposed to stay with the family. And I answered, it did. I think that was the first time in my life I truly understood. Family is not always the people who claim you in public. Sometimes family is the person who leaves you proof because she knows one day you will need more than memories. Sometimes family is the man who sits on the bathroom floor and waits while you cry. Sometimes family is the mother-in-law who removes empty chairs before you have to look at them. And sometimes, family is the version of yourself who finally stops begging to be chosen and chooses you back. 10. Final message. If this story reminded you of someone who only loved you when you were useful, I hope you remember this. You are not greedy for wanting truth. You are not dramatic for bringing proof. And you are not destroying a family by exposing the people who betrayed it first. Some lies survive because good people stay silent to keep the peace. But peace built on your humiliation is not peace. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel. Every week we share stories of betrayal, survival, family secrets, hidden receipts, and the kind of justice that finally arrives when someone stops begging and starts telling the truth.